Some moments in time are frozen forever, etched into our memories like ice that never melts. We revisit those turning points that define a lifetime and change the course of destiny. Click subscribe now to explore these powerful, frozen fragments of the human experience.
On the morning of April 3rd, 2024, my daughter-in-law set down her green smoothie on my grandmother's quilt, the one I'd hand-stitched over 3 winters, looked at me across my own kitchen table, and said, "Vivian, we've been thinking. This house is really too much for one person your age. Don't you think it's time you considered something more manageable?" I am Vivian May Holloway. I am 64 years old, and I want to tell you what happened next. If you're listening from somewhere far away, drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. And please stay with me until the end, because what came next was something I never could have planned. But somehow my late husband had planned it for me. 6 months after that morning, I was sitting on a sun-warmed terrace in Porto, Portugal, drinking espresso that cost less than $1, watching the Douro River catch the light like hammered copper. My phone showed 14 missed calls from my son. I poured a second cup and watched a fishing boat drift under the bridge. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Vivian May Holloway, née Crawford. I spent 31 years as a registered nurse at Mercy General Hospital in Columbus, Ohio. Labor and delivery. I brought somewhere close to 4,000 babies into this world. I held the hands of women in the worst pain of their lives and told them to breathe, told them they were stronger than they knew, told them the thing they were waiting for was almost here. I believed every word. I mention this because my daughter-in-law, Kayla, once described me to her friend on the phone as just a retired nurse. She said this while eating a bowl of soup I'd made from scratch, sitting in the house I'd owned for 27 years, wearing the cashmere robe she'd borrowed from my closet and never returned. But let me begin at the beginning, when I still believed we were a family. My husband, Gerald Holloway, died on September 9th, 2021. Heart attack, sudden and without warning. He was 63 years old. He had gone out to the garage to change the oil in his truck. And when he didn't come in for lunch, I went to find him. He was on the concrete floor beside the truck, one hand still holding a socket wrench. The paramedics said it was likely instantaneous. I've spent 3 years trying to decide if that was merciful. Gerald was a mechanical engineer who spent 35 years at Meridian Industrial Solutions. He was a quiet man who expressed love through action, fixed every hinge in our house before it had a chance to squeak, memorized my coffee order from every diner within 40 miles, kept a small notebook in his breast pocket where he recorded things I said I liked, so he could bring them to me later. I found that notebook in his nightstand after he died. 3 pages of accumulated Vivian things. Gardenias, the color of sky just before rain, lemon pound cake from the church on 5th Street, the way old wooden floors sound when a house settles at night. I couldn't read past the first page without putting it down. Our house on Claremont Avenue is a 1940s colonial with 4 bedrooms, a deep front porch, and a backyard garden that Gerald and I built together over 2 decades. We bought it in 1996 for $88,000. By 2021, Columbus had changed around us. The neighborhood had become desirable. Families with strollers, coffee shops, a yoga studio where the hardware store used to be. The house was worth something now. Our son Marcus was 35 when Gerald died. He worked in commercial real estate, drove a truck he couldn't quite afford, and was newly married to Kayla Bennett Holloway, who was 29, originally from Phoenix, and worked as what she called a brand consultant, which appeared to mean she advised small businesses on their Instagram presence and attended a great many networking events. Marcus came home for the funeral and stayed 2 weeks. On the last day, we sat on the back porch, and he said, "Mom, I've been talking to a financial advisor." I said, "About what?" He spread papers on the porch table. Dad didn't have as much life insurance as we thought, and the house, property taxes on a place this size on one income, it's going to be rough. I've been looking into a trust structure. If we put the house in a family trust now, with me as the co-trustee, we protect it from probate, reduce your tax exposure, and honestly, it just makes things simpler later on. Gerald had handled our finances. I handled the home, our son, my career. That had been our arrangement for 38 years, and I had never had reason to question it. I signed the papers Marcus brought. I was 58 years old, 2 weeks past burying my husband, and my son was sitting across from me, looking so much like Gerald that it hurt to see him. I should have read every word. I didn't read a single one. For the first year, Marcus called every Sunday. He and Kayla visited at Thanksgiving and Christmas. Kayla was polished and pleasant in the way of someone performing pleasantness. The right compliments delivered at the right intervals, a smile that arrived exactly on time. I told myself I was being uncharitable. I told myself grief made everything seem colder than it was. In the spring of 2023, Marcus called on a Tuesday evening. "Mom, I need to ask you something, and I need you to know it's temporary." I said, "Ask." "Kayla and I have been trying to get into the market. You know how it is right now. Even with my income, the down payment requirements are brutal. We were thinking if we could stay with you for a few months, just until we save enough, we'd cover groceries, help around the house. It would mean a lot to us. And honestly, I hate thinking about you alone in that big house." I had been alone in that house for a year and a half. The silence had become something physical. A presence that sat across from me at dinner, slept on Gerald's side of the bed. My garden kept me sane. My friend Dolores from the hospital kept me honest. "Of course," I said. "Come home." They moved in on a Saturday in March. Marcus brought 4 boxes. Kayla brought what appeared to be the contents of a small boutique. Skincare organized in labeled acrylic drawers, a ring light that required its own dedicated outlet, and a clothing rack that she assembled in my guest room without asking. "Just until we get on our feet," she said, surveying my living room with her head tilted the way people do when they're already redecorating in their minds. "We are so grateful, Vivian." She never called me Mom. Always Vivian, delivered with a slight emphasis, the way you'd address someone you were tolerating. The adjustments started within weeks. Kayla needed the dining room table clear by 9 each morning for client calls, so my sewing projects moved to the basement. She needed the guest bathroom for a morning skincare routine that I timed once, accidentally at 53 minutes. So I began using the small bathroom off the laundry room that Gerald had installed for yard work days. She needed the front bedroom for content filming. So the daybed I kept for Dolores when she visited late went into storage. Marcus said nothing. The boy who used to fall asleep on my shoulder during thunderstorms said nothing while his wife reorganized my house around her brand consulting schedule. "Vivian," Kayla said one morning, her smoothie blending loud enough to vibrate the cabinet doors. "I've been thinking about the living room. The furniture arrangement blocks the natural light, and natural light is so important for mental wellness. Would you mind if we shifted things around?" Gerald had arranged that living room. He'd measured twice and moved the couch 4 times before he was satisfied. I'd laughed at him for it. "Of course, dear," I said. The couch moved. The armchair Gerald reupholstered one winter moved to the garage. My framed family photographs. Gerald and me at Niagara Falls. Marcus at his college graduation. My mother in her Sunday hat. Came down because, Kayla explained, a cohesive visual environment reduces cognitive clutter. My mother's face went into a box in the basement. They paid $300 a month toward groceries. The mortgage was $2,100, utilities were $380, taxes were $540, insurance was $160. I was covering $4,080 of a $4,380 monthly household, while they saved for their forever home and mine. But they were family. Gerald would have wanted me to help. The moment that changed everything happened on a Thursday afternoon in late August. I was deadheading roses in the backyard when I heard Kayla through the kitchen window on the phone. Voice easy and unbothered. "No, it's fine. It's actually perfect. 0 rent. She cooks. I mean, it's very southern, very heavy, but Marcus eats it. We've already got almost enough for the down payment on the Worthington house. The one with the chef's kitchen. Yeah, once we're in, we're in. His mom's not going anywhere. She doesn't really have anywhere to go. I mean, she's sweet, but she's 64 and on a fixed income. She's not exactly going to reinvent herself at this point. Not going to reinvent herself. I stood in my garden with soil on my hands and something quiet and absolute settling into my chest. I did not cry. I did not go inside and confront her. I went back to my roses and I made myself a promise. I would not say one word until I had a plan. April 3rd arrived like any other Thursday. I woke at 5:30, made coffee, sat with Gerald's good mug on the back porch watching the garden come to light. At 6:50, Kayla appeared in the kitchen doorway in coordinated athleisure, hair perfect, face freshly cerumed. "Vivian, do you have a few minutes? Marcus and I would like to talk to you about something." "Of course." Marcus appeared beside her, and I saw immediately from the careful blankness of his face that this was rehearsed. Kayla sat down, folded her hands. She had the energy of someone who had practiced this conversation and was satisfied with how it would go. "We are so grateful for everything you've done for us. Truly, you've been so generous letting us be here while we saved." She paused. "But Marcus and I have been talking honestly about the future, about what makes sense for everyone." Another pause, this one shaped to look like compassion. "Vivian, this house is a lot of house for one person. The upkeep, the yard, all those stairs. At your age, that's a real burden. We've actually looked into some lovely communities. There's one in Gahanna, independent living, not a nursing home, very active. Garden club, fitness classes, people in your same season of life." "Same season of life. What happens to this house?" I asked. My voice was level. Kayla glanced at Marcus. Marcus looked at the table. "Well," she said, "since it's already in the family trust with Marcus as co-trustee, it would just transition to our primary residence. We take over the mortgage, the maintenance, everything. You wouldn't have to worry about any of it anymore." "I'd love to not worry," I said. "When are you thinking?" Marcus finally looked up. "Mom, we give you plenty of time. 2 months, maybe 2.5. The Gahanna place has availability in June. 2 months. 26 months they'd lived rent-free in my house, and they were handing me a 2-month window." I looked at my son. I searched his face for the boy who had once, at age 7, made me a birthday card that said, "You are my best mom in the world," and kept it on the refrigerator for 6 months because he didn't want me to feel like the sentiment had expired. "Okay," I said. "Let me think about it." Kayla smiled. "Take your time. We just want what's best for everyone." I excused myself, went upstairs, closed the bedroom door, and sat on the bed Gerald and I had shared for 31 years. My hands were completely still. My mind was very clear. I opened the nightstand. Behind Gerald's reading glasses and his Bible was a key I'd found 3 months after his death and never known what to open. A small, flat key with a bank logo stamped into the metal. I had carried that key in my wallet ever since, waiting to understand it. I understood it now. Gerald's attorney was a man named Paul Osei, whose card had been in Gerald's home office files, paper-clipped to a document I hadn't opened because the grief of the first year had made paperwork feel impossible. I called that morning. "Mrs. Holloway," he said. "I was wondering when you'd reach out. Your husband made arrangements and asked me to wait for your call. He said you'd call when you needed to. He said that. He knew you. He said you wouldn't call until things got hard enough that you had to. He wanted to make sure you were ready to hear it. I drove to Paul's office that afternoon." He was a trim Ghanaian-American man in his 50s, with a careful, kind way of speaking and a file folder thick enough that I had to set it across my knees. "Gerald restructured his finances in 2018, Paul said. "He did it quietly because, and I'm quoting him directly here, 'Vivian trusts me, and I want to make sure I deserve that trust before I tell her about any of this.' He took me through it line by line. Gerald's pension from Meridian, deferred compensation he'd elected to hold rather than receive $212,000, disbursable upon his death to me as sole beneficiary. The paperwork had been filed. The disbursement had been waiting for my claim. A whole life insurance policy taken out in 2005 that Gerald had increased incrementally over 16 years, $740,000 death benefit. Beneficiary Vivian May Holloway. No contestation period. Unclaimed because I had found the smaller supplemental policy through his employer and assumed that was all there was. A brokerage account in his name with me as transfer-on death beneficiary. $318,000. Accumulated through 30 years of index fund contributions Gerald had made without ever mentioning them. I didn't want to promise anything I couldn't deliver, his letter in the file said, so I didn't say a word until I was sure. A storage unit registered in both our names at Secure Keep on Henderson Road, prepaid for 5 years from 2021. The flat key. I sat in Paul's office for a long time after he finished. "How much total?" I asked, though I'd already done the math in my head. Liquid assets, not counting the house, approximately $1.27 million, plus whatever's in the storage unit, which Gerald didn't detail to me. Gerald, who drove a 10-year-old truck because he said new cars were a financial decision masquerading as an emotional one. Gerald, who brought home gardenias because he'd written down that I loved them. Gerald, who spent 35 years building me a door out of a room I didn't know I was locked in. He never said a word, I said. He wanted to give you a choice, Paul said gently. Not a burden. I claimed everything that week. The pension disbursement arrived in 4 days. The life insurance check took 8. The brokerage transfer completed in 2 weeks. I opened a new account at a credit union 3 miles from the house. In my name only. No co-trustee, no family access, no exceptions. Then I drove to Secure Keep on Henderson Road. The unit was a 10 by 10 climate-controlled room. Inside, Gerald's woodworking tools, carefully wrapped. 2 paintings by his mother that I'd thought were lost in a basement flood. A fireproof lockbox. And in that lockbox, a handwritten letter dated August 14th, 2021, 26 days before he died. Though he couldn't have known that. Vivian, if you found this, you were ready to find it. I know you wouldn't look until you had to. The money is yours, not Marcus's, not anyone else's. I watched my father leave everything to my brother because he was the son, and I watched my mother spend her last years asking for permission to buy her own groceries. I swore I would never let that happen to you. The house trust document has conditions. Read the full document. Paul has a copy. Marcus can only assume full ownership if you voluntarily and in writing choose to leave. If anyone pressures you to leave before you're ready, the condition is void and full ownership reverts to you. That's what it says. Make sure you know what you signed. One more thing. I always knew you were stronger than you let yourself be. You spent 31 years catching other people when they fell. It's your turn to be caught now, even if the only person doing the catching is you. I love you. I loved you since 1984 when you told me I had my shoes on the wrong feet at Sharon Atkins's party, and then helped me fix them without making me feel like a fool. I never stopped. Go somewhere beautiful. You've earned it. Gerald, I sat on the concrete floor of that storage unit and cried in a way I hadn't let myself cry since the day of his funeral. Then I stood up, locked the box, and drove to see a woman named Renata Souza, an international relocation specialist whose name I had found, somewhat remarkably, on a flyer at the library 3 weeks earlier. The same week I'd started, in the quiet part of my mind, to consider the shape of escape. Renata was 50, Brazilian-American, practical in the way of someone who had moved continents herself and had no patience for the word impossible. You said Portugal, she said. Porto specifically. I looked it up. A nurse friend of mine retired there. She said the people are kind, and the light is different from anywhere else. It is. Cost of living is a fraction of the U.S. for someone with your income. You could live beautifully on $40,000 to $50,000 a year and never touch your principal. Own property within 2 years if you wanted. I want to rent first. I want to be sure. She had 3 listings on her screen within the hour. I chose a 2-bedroom apartment in the Bonfim neighborhood. High ceilings, blue tile, a small balcony over a cobblestone street, 8 minutes walk to the river. 4 months rent paid up front, €2,000 per month. Back home, I began packing slowly, invisibly. 3 boxes a week, to a storage unit I rented under my name. My grandmother's china, Gerald's mother's paintings, the photo albums, the letter. I left the furniture. I left the furniture. I left the couch Kayla had moved and the walls where my photographs had been. I let them keep thinking they were inheriting a home. They were inheriting an empty house with someone else's mortgage. I also visited Paul Osei again and had him prepare a full legal review of the trust document. He called me the next morning. Vivian, you need to know something. The document Marcus had you sign is exactly what Gerald describes, a conditional transfer. You have full right of occupancy for your lifetime. You have the right to sell with Marcus's consent. And here's the important part. Under Oregon property law, he caught himself. Ohio law. Under Ohio law, if a co-trustee attempts to remove the primary beneficiary through coercion or misrepresentation, the transfer is voidable. Marcus telling you to leave constitutes coercive removal. You could challenge this. I don't want to challenge it, I said. I want to sell it. Paul was quiet for a moment. Then we need his signature on the listing agreement. Given the circumstances, any judge would compel it. But he'll sign, I said. He just won't know why until it's done. I listed the house quietly through an agent named Teresa Marks, who had sold 4 homes on my street in the last 2 years. She walked through every room and said, "Vivian, this house is going to move fast. Give me a week." She had 3 offers in 5 days. I accepted the one from a young couple. Both teachers, first home, 33 years old, the wife 4 months pregnant. They offered $347,000 cash. The house had been appraised at $340,000. I signed. Closing date, June 30th. Memorial Day weekend, I cooked for 2 days. Fried catfish with my mother's cornmeal crust. Candied yams with real butter and brown sugar. Collard greens slow cooked with smoked turkey neck. Macaroni and cheese with sharp cheddar and a breadcrumb top that came out of the oven. Golden and bubbling. Sweet potato pie. Gerald's favorite. The one I made every year for his birthday. I invited Dolores, my hospital friend Cheryl, and my neighbor Ruth. Marcus and Kayla came at 2 o'clock. Kayla photographed each dish and posted 3 of them before we sat down. "Vivian, this is incredible," she said. "You really should have been a caterer." I should have been a caterer. 31 years in labor and delivery, and I should have been a caterer. Thank you, dear. We ate. Marcus had 2 full plates. He was relaxed in the way of someone who believes everything is going according to plan. "Have you looked at the Gahana place?" he asked, somewhere between the catfish and the pie. "I have," I said. "Very nice. We could go together for a tour this week if you want." "That's thoughtful. Actually, Marcus, I wanted to tell you both something. I've made my decision." Kayla looked up. Her expression was carefully pleasant, which meant she thought she already knew the answer. "I'm not going to Gahana," I said. "I found somewhere better." Marcus smiled, indulgent. "Where's that?" "Porto, Portugal. I leave July 5th. Silence. Dolores, who knew, continued eating her catfish. "I'm sorry," Kayla said. She set down her fork. "Did you say Portugal?" "Porto specifically. I've rented an apartment in the Bonfim neighborhood. River views. 2 bedrooms. Beautiful light. I'm told the pastries are extraordinary. Mom." Marcus was using his careful voice, the one he used for confused elderly clients. "That's not, you can't just move to Portugal. Do you have any idea what that costs?" "About €2,000 a month, which I can manage comfortably, given what your father left me." Marcus blinked. "Dad didn't. The medical costs. Your father," I said, "left me $740,000 in life insurance, $212,000 in pension disbursement, and $1,300,000 in pension disbursement, and $1,318,000 in a brokerage account he'd been building since 1994. He'd been planning it for 27 years. I didn't know either. I found out in April." The color left Kayla's face in a way that was almost interesting to watch. Marcus did the math. That's over $1 million. $1.27 million, plus the proceeds from this house, which closes June 30th. Kayla stood up. "You're selling this house." "I am. The buyers are a young couple, both teachers. They're expecting their first child. I think Gerald would have liked them. It's in Marcus's name," she started. "It's in a conditional trust, and the condition per Paul Osei, per the original document, per Ohio law, was never met. I have every right to sell with Marcus's cooperation. Marcus." I looked at my son. "I need your signature on the listing agreement. Paul has the paperwork ready." Marcus looked like a man standing in a room watching the wall slowly change into something unfamiliar. "Mom," he said quietly, I didn't know about the money. I know you didn't. We were just trying to, we thought you thought I was helpless," I said and kept my voice even. "You thought I was a woman who'd spent herself dry and had nothing left. You were trying to manage a situation, and the situation was me." I picked up my napkin. "I understand it, Marcus. I don't entirely forgive it yet, but I understand it." Kayla was very still. "You gave me a timeline," I said to her. 2 months to become manageable. I used the time differently than you expected." She said nothing. There was nothing to say. "The pie is Gerald's recipe," I said to the table. He used to say sweet potato pie was proof that ordinary things could become extraordinary if you paid them enough attention. I've been thinking about that. I looked at Marcus. His eyes were wet. I need your signature, baby. And then I need you to find your own place. You've got a month. Dolores refilled her sweet tea and said to no one in particular, best meal I've had in years. Marcus signed the paperwork that Sunday. He didn't speak much. Kayla spoke less. They found an apartment in Dublin, Ohio. 1 bedroom, $1,700 a month. I know because Marcus told me in the parking lot of Paul's office, in the voice of a man who had recently learned the cost of things. June 30th, I met the buyers at the title office. They were both wearing dress clothes, a little nervous, holding hands in the waiting room like it was a ceremony, which in a way it was. His name was Daniel, hers was Simone. She was visibly pregnant, one hand resting on her belly while she signed. Mrs. Holloway, she said. We read about the neighborhood, the garden especially. I want you to know we're going to take care of it. Gerald built that garden, I said. He planted the roses in 1999. They bloom every May, don't cut them back too early in the spring. She wrote it down. The check cleared for $339,000 after commission. My total, that evening, sitting at the kitchen table of a house I was sleeping in for the last 3 nights, $1,609,000 in liquid assets, plus annual pension income for life. I had come closer to a widow in a fixed-income house. I left something different. I called Dolores that night. You actually did it, she said. I leave in 5 days. Gerald would lose his mind. In a good way. I know. I keep thinking about what he wrote. That he wanted me to go somewhere beautiful. Go then, and call me the second you land. I want a voice message, not a text. I want to hear it in your voice. July 5th arrived gray and warm. My neighbor Ruth stood on her porch as the car came. She was in her house slippers, arms crossed against the morning chill. And when I came down the front walk with my 2 bags, she said, Vivian Holloway, you are the most surprising person I have ever known. I didn't know that about myself until recently, I said. She hugged me for a long time. Go on then. Go be surprising somewhere beautiful. The flight from Columbus to Lisbon, connecting through Newark, was 11 hours. I flew business class. The flight attendant offered champagne after takeoff. I took it. Outside the window. The country I'd spent 64 years in disappeared into clouds. And I felt, for the first time in longer than I could name, that the future was a place I actually wanted to go. I landed in Lisbon at 10 in the morning local time, and a woman named Clara, who ran an expat welcome service, met me at arrivals holding a sign with my name. She was 58, from Jamaica originally, had lived in Portugal for 11 years. You look calmer than most first-timers, she said. I've been anticipating this for 3 months. It shows, she smiled. Come on, the train to Porto leaves at noon. The train north took 3 hours along the coast, green hills, river valleys, small towns with terracotta rooftops. I sat with my forehead nearly touching the window like a child. Clara pointed out landmarks, ate half a sandwich, talked about the city the way you talk about a person you love. My apartment in Bonfim was on the 3rd floor of a building with blue azulejo tiles on the exterior and wooden floors that creaked pleasantly underfoot. The landlord, a retired schoolteacher named Senor Antunes, met me at the door with a neighbor who translated. He pressed a small potted gardenia into my hands upon arrival. The complex smell of it stopped me mid-step. Parabens, he said. Congratulations. I set the gardenia on the balcony railing, where it caught the afternoon light, and stood looking out at the cobblestone street, the laundry strung between buildings, the sound of someone practicing guitar 3 floors up. I thought Gerald. Of course a gardenia. The first weeks were harder than I expected. The language was the first wall. My high school Spanish provided false confidence, and Portuguese agreed with none of my assumptions. I spent an hour in a pharmacy trying to convey that I needed saline nasal spray and left with something that turned out to be a mild laxative. I chose to find as funny, which seemed like the only reasonable option. The loneliness arrived at odd angles. Not during the days, which were full of small missions and small discoveries. But in the early evenings, when I had always started dinner, and Gerald had always appeared in the kitchen doorway to taste things and offer unnecessary advice, I missed being meted by someone who loved me. I missed the particular weight of a shared life. But there were mornings, The light in Porto was a different quality from any light I had known. Golden in the early hours, diffuse and gentle. The kind of light that makes you feel watched over. I developed a morning walk along the river, 40 minutes out and 40 back, the water brown and wide below the Dom Luis Bridge. I nodded to the same fisherman every day, until the nodding became a small conversation became a regular stop. 6 weeks in, I pinned a hand-lettered notice in the building lobby and the community board at the neighborhood cafe. Piano and English lessons available. All ages welcome. Beginner to intermediate. Inquire within. I had brought nothing to Portugal except my clothes, Gerald's letter, and the knowledge of what I knew. It turned out that was more than enough. 4 families responded, 8 students total. Portuguese, British, 1 Brazilian girl who laughed every time she made a mistake, and somehow made the mistake seem like the best part. Teaching again was like pressing a bruise I hadn't known was there. It hurt, and it helped in the same moment. My student Tomas, age 10, missing 2 front teeth, told me after his 4th lesson that I was the most serious teacher, but also sometimes funny. I took that as the highest praise available. 3 months into my new life, on a clear Tuesday morning, my phone rang. Ohio area code. I was on my balcony with coffee and didn't hesitate. Marcus. His voice was thin. Mom, I don't know how to start. Start anywhere. He told me that Kayla had left. Packed and gone to her parents in Arizona on a Thursday while he was working. No long conversation, no negotiation. A note on the kitchen counter saying she needed more than their current situation could offer, and she hoped he understood. Did you understand? I asked. He laughed ragged. I understood it the second I read it. She married what she thought I could deliver. When the delivery stopped, she stopped. A long pause. Mom, I'm in therapy. Good. Twice a week. I'm trying to figure out how I became someone who could do what I did to you. Stand in your kitchen in your house and hand you a timeline. Look at my own mother like a problem that needed relocating. His voice broke. I don't have an excuse. I'm not calling to give you one. I just needed you to know that I know what I did, and I don't know if there's any way back from it, but I wanted to ask. I watched a boat move slowly under the bridge in the distance. There's a way back, I said. It's just not the road you came in on. What does that mean? It means you don't get to come back to who I was before. That woman isn't available anymore. But the woman I am now? She'd like to know her son, if he's working on becoming someone worth knowing. He was quiet for a long moment. Can I visit? September, I said. Come in September. The light here is extraordinary in September. He came on a Thursday, arriving at Porto's small airport with a single backpack and the look of a man who had stopped performing. The designer athleisure was gone. He wore jeans and a plain shirt and seemed, somehow, younger and older at the same time. I picked him up myself. We drove back to Bonfim mostly in silence, which felt honest. He stood on my balcony for a full minute without speaking, looking down at the cobblestones, across at the terracotta rooftops, out toward the river just visible at the end of the street. Mom, he said, you built this. Your father built this. He just gave me the tools and waited. That's not, he turned. His eyes were full. You could have stayed. You could have gone to that Gahana place and made the best of it, and I never would have. You never would have had to. He stopped. I know. Why didn't you fight sooner? You knew what was happening. You stayed quiet for months. I thought about standing in my garden in August with soil on my hands, because I wanted to be sure. I wanted to have somewhere to go before I said a single word. I didn't want to fight. I wanted to leave so completely that there was nothing left to fight about. He nodded slowly. I'm proud of you, he said. I know I don't have standing to say that right now. I know that. But I need you to know I see you. I see who you are. I never looked before. I'm looking now. We had dinner with Clara that evening, and with 2 women from her expat community, a retired teacher from Chicago named Bev, and a former social worker from Atlanta named June, both of whom had been warned. They were gracious and watchful in equal measure. June cornered Marcus at the kitchen counter while he was opening wine. Your mother rebuilt herself in a foreign country at 64 years old, she said pleasantly. I need you to understand the size of that. I'm starting to, Marcus said. Starting is the right word. Don't rush past it. Marcus visited for 8 days. We walked the river path every morning. I showed him Senhor Antunes' building, my piano students' families, the cafe where I had learned to order coffee correctly by week 4. We talked about Gerald, really talked, the way we'd never managed while Gerald was alive because Gerald had been quietly present in all the spaces where words might have gone. Tell me about when he was drinking, Marcus said one afternoon. He wasn't. Not ever, not with you. I looked at the river. But he carried the guilt of other things, old guilts. He spent his whole life making sure the people he loved were protected. That was his language. On his last morning, Marcus sat at my kitchen table with coffee and said, I met someone. Her name is Alicia. She's an accountant. She grew up in Cleveland. Tell me about her. She grew up in Cleveland, he said again, and smiled. She is the most honest person I've ever met. She told me on our second date that she had no interest in performing a relationship, and if I was looking for someone to look good in photos, I should find someone else. I like her already. Mom. He set down his cup. I know I don't deserve. I know you don't owe me. He stopped and tried again. Thank you for September. Thank you for giving me a door. Don't stand in the doorway, I said. Come through it or go home. Those are the only options. He came through it or go home. Those are the only options. He came through it. 1 year and 2 months after July 5th, I wake to my phone alarm. Rare, because today is intentional. Today I want to be awake for all of it. I make coffee. I carry it to the balcony. The Douro River is pewter and pink in the early light. The gardenia Gerald arranged from beyond his own death has become 3 gardenias. I split it in the spring, and now they crowd the railing and smell. Every morning, like being found. My phone fills in the order it always does. Dolores, happy anniversary of your best decision. I'm visiting in March whether you invite me or not. Clara, Riverwalk at 8. I'm bringing pastéis de nata. Marcus, Mom, 1 year. I love you. Alicia says she loves you too, and she hasn't even met you yet. That's who she is. A photo attached. Marcus and a woman with natural hair and reading glasses pushed up on her forehead, both laughing at something outside the frame. And a voice message from Simone, the teacher who bought my house. I press play. Wind. A baby's voice trying to form words. Then Simone, Mrs. Muddle. Holloway, this is Gerald Jr. saying good morning. He says it slightly differently, but the feeling is clear. The roses came in beautifully this May. We didn't cut them back too early. Daniel wants me to tell you he follows your instructions like they're sacred text. We love this house. We love what you left in it. I play it twice. Then I close my eyes and let the river sound come up from the street, and the smell of the gardenias, and the distant church bells that ring at 7 every morning without asking permission from anyone. Gerald left me a door. I walked through it. That is the whole story, and it is also just the beginning. They told me I had passed the age of new things. They told me, gently and with great confidence, exactly what kind of woman I was, exactly what size of life I was fit for, exactly where I ought to be managed and maintained until I stopped being inconvenient. They were wrong about all of it. If you are a woman who has been told she is finished, you are not finished. If you have been told your age is a limitation, it is not a limitation. If someone has looked at everything you have built and offered you a smaller room in exchange, do not take the smaller room. Find your own place. Build it if you have to. Cross an ocean to reach it if you must. It is there, and it is yours, and it has been waiting for you longer than you know. To every woman listening, you are not too old. You are not too late. You are exactly on time. If this story reached something in you, please share it with a woman who needs to hear it. Drop your city in the comments. Let's see how far Vivian travels.